All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Murphy with Allegheny Immigration Group. I'm live tonight from our offices in the Grant Building in downtown Pittsburgh. And this is our weekly live, Thursday at 6. So let's get into it. There's some housekeeping notes here. We now have an official followers list. You can sign up. We'll share some of our swag with you. There's coffee cups, t-shirts, bags, and things of that nature. It's nice things. You can have them. It might fill a need for you. We have plenty of Allegheny Immigration Group pens. Those of you who are involved, educators, school administrators, if you need some pens, obviously we'll send those to you free of charge. But also it's good to get signed up because you get notifications of lives, some of our street events, videos that are coming out, and it would be nice for us to be able to keep in touch with you and our immigration information. So let's see, the Green Card Through Marriage Special, that's still on through Monday. I've got to end it on Monday. It's $1,000 Green Card Through Marriage. That's legal fee only. There's filing fees to USCIS. They're like $1,760. We can't discount those fees to USCIS. They exact a heavy price, and they keep going up lately. So if you have something like that going, this might be a great time. We can lower the legal fees, but we can't cut the government fees. So it's $1,000 to us for the legal fee, $1,760 to USCIS, and then there'll be a couple $100 for a medical examination. You might also want to consider that that's for a typical immigration through marriage. So if one of the spouses is undocumented and needs a waiver, we'd have to charge more for that. The waiver itself, I think, is like a $900 filing fee. That might not be accurate, but that's the number that comes to mind right now. Okay, there's a proposal afoot to change the asylum rules. Historically, asylum was free in the United States. You could file for it, and you would even get your first work permit free of charge. Asylum seekers filing for their first employment authorization got a waiver of the fees under Exemption C8 of the Act. But they're going to take, or at least the plan is to charge a minimal fee to file for asylum. I think they're charging $50. And then they plan on taking away the free work authorization. And that's a significant expense. It's $495 all told. And there is a short video on the Allegheny Immigration Group Facebook page about that. And I think it's titled "The Plot to Suppress Asylum Claims." It's a pretty funny picture on the face of it, the cover of it. It's a guy lighting a cigar with a $100 bill. And it's about money, but I also believe that this is an effort to suppress all asylum claims, to cut down on the frivolous ones. And you have the baby in the bathwater there. Asylum is a form of humanitarian immigration, and it's designed to protect really some of the most pitiable. And when I say that, I don't mean pitiful. I mean people that really deserve our pity, and charging them to work. What are they going to do? They're going to have to work under the table is what's going to happen. And you're going to create another underclass. But those are our housekeeping notes. We're going to go into some immigration basics here today. I think that I've gotten into depth on some other things in different lives, but today it might be nice to just go over the basic stuff. I know there's a lot of interest in basic immigration law. It's this sort of cryptic and confusing subject. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of outright lies that have been introduced, all sorts of stuff. And some of them are even tied up with slurs and politics and people's anger. So I'm going to talk about some of those today. And please jump in with your questions. If you have an immigration question, I'm here to take them. I mean, that's what this time is for. All right, anyway, let's talk about the basic immigration law. So everybody who gets in this country has to have a visa issued. They have to show up at a port of entry, and that could be the airport, it could be on a ship, it could be at the border. And then the visa is presented to immigration authorities, and the immigration authorities examine the visa. There's some minor questioning of the person intending to enter the country about whether their intended activity in the country matches up with the type of visa they have, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The visa was issued by the U.S. consulate in the foreign country after they did interviews and determined that the person was admissible, that the person on her face didn't have any bars to being admitted in the United States. But the visa doesn't get you admitted. It's not automatic. When you show up at the border and present that visa, to Customs and Border Protection, they're doing what they call an inspection. They're inspecting you as a potential entrant in the United States. They're checking your visa purpose, and they're cross-referencing this type of visa you have and the purpose of that visa with what you're saying your purpose is. And I'll give you an example. If your stated purpose when you applied for a visa, you told the consulate that you wanted to come to the United States and study, if you got to Customs and Border Protection at the border, and when they said, what do you plan on doing in the United States, and you told them that you wanted to get married, they would say you're not admissible for that purpose. You're only admissible for the purpose of study. Now, this whole thing of inspection, it's kind of neat. It goes back to ancient times of sailors and ships full of swarthy maritime types showing up in foreign shores. And these would be small towns that had a port, and very commonly the local constable or sheriff or somebody of that nature, when these guys were getting off the ship, would come and check them. They'd be coming into his town. What do you want to do in our town? They'd look at these guys and see if they had any, well, maybe obvious diseases of scurvy and things that sailors might be carrying. And they would also check and make sure they had money, because if they were loose in his town and didn't have money, that might be a crime risk, and he had law enforcement capabilities. He was literally inspecting these guys as they came off these ships. And that's sort of, it's, carried through in tradition. Even to this day, when you arrive at the border, you're inspected by CBP. They check your purpose. The money stuff has already been done at the consulate. You have to have the medical stuff has been done before the visa was issued. You had to have an immigration medical exam. And if your answers match up, if you appear to be the person in the documents you're presenting and so on and so forth, you will then be admitted. They'll stamp your passport they'll stamp actually a form called I-94. And I-94 is your period of authorized stay. Now, the visa itself may be good for 10 years, but you can't stay in the United States for 10 years on that visa. You have to leave by the end of your period of authorized stay. And that will be your I-94D. The visa expiration is the last day you can enter the United States. So if your visa expired on December 31st, that's the last day you can get in. You can get an authorized stay. In a lot of visas, it's 6 months. So it would be 6 months after that. Even though the underlying visa has expired, it was valid and you were admissible because it was valid. You were inspected. Your purpose and your presentation matched the documents you showed, and then you were admitted by Customs and Border Protection. Now, some of the more common types of visas. Well, let me back up for a minute. All visas, all entries, okay, and admissions are in one of two broad categories, and they're called immigrant and non-immigrant admissions. So, what's the difference? I mean, we think of everybody who's coming here as an immigrant. But we don't think of tourists as immigrants. So what are we getting at? Well, we call tourists non-immigrants. So an immigrant is someone who's moving into the United States permanently. That would be, for example, the wife of a U.S. citizen coming in the United States to live with her husband forever as a citizen. That's an immigrant admission. She's being admitted to immigrate and become an American eventually. She'd get a green card first. A non-immigrant admission is a temporary purpose. I always give the example of a visit to the Grand Canyon or a medical procedure. Some of the classics are those. That's a tourist visa, that's a B visa, would be for the purpose of tourism. And those people are almost never allowed to work. A B visa has no working privileges. It's a violation of the non-immigrant nature of the visa. It's an immigration crime. So B visa holders cannot work. It's illegal. Their purpose in the United States is a temporary tourist purpose, and that's what they're supposed to be doing. And that becomes a sticking point at the consulate to get the B visa issued. The intending tourist doesn't need an invitation. I think at one time there was a practice of somebody in America writing a letter inviting the foreigner, and that foreigner would bring that invitation with him to the consulate as proof of his legitimate purpose in the United States. Right now, we have the American tourism industry spending billions of dollars a year everywhere in the world to try and encourage people to come here for tourism purposes. So I think it's fair to say they're invited, all right? So what we have to do is make sure that two things, that, when you talk about immigrant versus non-immigrant admission, it's assumed that everyone who shows up at our borders is going to want to stay here forever. So the intending non-immigrant, whether that's a tourist, a student, a summer work and learn, the people coming for medical, they have to prove that they have to overcome the presumption that they're going to move in forever. And that's called overcoming the presumption of non-immigrant intent. So, for example, suppose the person that wanted a B visa was married to an American citizen. Well, that's a really serious thing, because he's probably going to want to stay here with his wife. And he would have to show evidence that, in spite of the fact that there's something pulling him here, the wife, there's something at home pulling him back. For example, a good job. Another interesting thing is they want to make sure that your period of stay here, this is in the tourist category, doesn't destroy the things that are pulling you back. For example, if you were claiming that the thing pulling you back to your home country was a great job there, but you wanted to stay in the United States for 6 months, the question might arise is, well, what's going to happen to your job if you're not there for 6 months? And in those circumstances, that would be a concern. So it's nice in a case where you're using the pull of a job to demonstrate that there's something pulling you home. It would be good to have a letter from the employer saying that, we allowed him to do this, he discussed it with us, the job will be here when he gets back, he's a valuable employee, and things of that nature. Now, most people who come on a tourist visa, as I said, the thing that invited them is the tourism industry. So it's also a value when the intending B tourist, that's a B visa tourist, goes to the consulate to get his visa, to have a list of what he wants to do in the United States. Someone who shows up and asks for a B visa and has no real plans, again, this looks like someone who might fail inspection. And this is back to the constable with the ship of arriving sailors. What do you want to do in our town? So people do get B visas and they do come to visit friends, but more often than not, and the really intended purpose is to support the tourism industry. So it's very helpful when someone is applying at an overseas consulate to get a B visa that they have, for example, an itinerary, like places they plan on going, hotels they plan on staying in, reservations at, to see La Cage aux Folles in New York City or something of that nature. That shows they have a plan, and it's a tourist compatible plan. If you show up with if you're trying to be admitted, you've demonstrated at the consulate that you're admissible, but you can't. It becomes much more difficult when you're sitting down with the consular officer and he says, "What are you going to do in the United States?" and you have no plans. You're just going to go visit a friend. There are people that do enter on tourist visas to just go visit a friend. That's a permitted use of a B visa, but it's harder to overcome that presumption that once you get in, you're never going to want to leave when you don't have plans. Plans seem more like a real legitimate tourist purpose. No plans seem like you want to get in and you'll get whatever status you can qualify for easily, and you're never leaving. B visa holders, unless they change their immigration status, can never work. All right, that's a violation of their non-immigrant status. I spoke to a woman recently, very nice woman, who had been working for years on a B visa, and even had, she was a non-English speaker, what had been represented to her as a work permit, and had even paid these people to renew her work permit. And she called me about getting a green card, and I had to inform her, well, I want to look at the documents first, but it looks like she may be a victim of immigration fraud. Now, there's a lot of people like that out there now. Immigration's a hot topic, and lots of people are being defrauded by fake immigration lawyers. And they could be notarios, and those are Latin American. They can do immigration in Mexico, but they can't do it here. That can be fraudsters, employment related. Sammy is asking, what does B visa holder mean? That's a very good question, Sammy. So I think before you tuned in, I was talking about the two that, and perhaps the most common category of non-immigrant visa is a B visa, and that is people, non-immigrant visas are for people who are just having a temporary visit. They're coming to visit, again, at the Niagara Falls, or to tour the United States. They're really, truly tourists. So a B visa holder is someone who's gone to the consulate in his home country, filled out the application for a B visa, had an interview with a consular officer, and demonstrated to the satisfaction of the consular officer that his actual purpose is tourism. He's overcome the presumption that if we let him in the United States, he's going to stay forever by demonstrating what's called non-immigrant intent. And you can do that a couple ways. And there's three big ways, and I'll hit them again quickly. The first thing that you have to do to overcome the presumption of immigrant intent is to, I got a couple text messages here, is to prove that there's significant ties to the home country. Family, particularly family that's dependent upon you, is very strong evidence. An important job or a good job in the home country, that's good evidence. Those are things tying you to the home country and pulling you back. And then you want to demonstrate that there is not a significant pull here in the United States for you. You may have a great job in your home country, but at the same time, if you have no family there, if you don't own anything there, and all your family already lives in the United States, well, that's something pulling you here. So that would be the second factor, right? So the first factor is significant things. These are factors that would be weighed in overcoming the presumption that everybody who's applying for visas, even temporary visas, will try and move in. Significant ties to the home country, that's a pullback. Lack of ties here, nothing pulling you here, or minimal things pulling you here. And the third thing is that if they allow you in, you have to demonstrate that being in the United States for the time you want to be in there won't destroy the things that are pulling you back. And I gave the example of someone who has a job and is claiming that his great job as an executive is pulling him back home. They might want to ask, well, then, will that job still be there if you're admitted to the United States for 6 months? And in many cases, that are pretty reasonable to think that that job would be lost. And a nice letter from the employer saying that this travel is authorized and that the job will be there for him can cure that kind of conflict. But that's a B visa holder. It's just a type of visa that's issued to people who've demonstrated the non-immigrant purpose of tourist and overcome the presumption that even though they're saying tourists, they're going to move in. Another interesting type of visa is an F visa. Now, when we talk about these, they all have a period of authorized stay. At a B visa, it's usually 180 days. A B visa can have a 10-year period of length, but you can only come in for 6 months at a time. And you could extend that if you want to, but that's not what we're talking about now. But they all have a period of authorized stay. And F visas for students, and they've been sponsored, in this case, the institution that wants them here, where the B visa holder, the institution that wants them here is the travel industry. The F visa holder is the educational institution itself. They're the sponsor. They're the party that has invited this person by advertising their school overseas. And they do, in most cases, the school itself does a lot of the applying for the student. But an F visa, the period of authorized stay, there's usually not a date there. There's usually a notation that just says D/S, and that means duration of studies. The school, as the sponsor of the F visa holder, has to make sure that the student is actually going to classes and enrolled and hasn't failed out or stopped attending. And if the student does fail out of school or stops attending classes, the school, as the sponsor of the student visa, the school itself will report that student as out of compliance with their F visa to USCIS because the studies have ceased. That's what the DS notation means. But someone who's admitted on an F student visa with a DS notation could stay here almost indefinitely as long as they were enrolled in a qualifying institution that was willing to sponsor them. The problem with an F visa is, like the B visa, there's no work privilege. You're not allowed to work. The exceptions to that, now with the B visa, there's no exception. B visa holder cannot work unless they switch into another status. An F visa holder, which is a student, is allowed to work for the school they're in. Okay, a lot of people work their way through school by, cleaning and working in a cafeteria or something like that. So that's allowed. Another thing F visa holders are allowed to do is called OPT, and that's I think it's optional practical training. That's almost like an internship, and that would be an outside job in the field of study, and the limitation is 20 hours a week. So that's an F visa holder. So they could stay, and they can even do minimal work. They can't really earn a living, so it gets, again, difficult for them to stay. All right, so another question here. What if they have educational issues and that's why they failed school? So you mean some sort of emotional or cognitive challenge that? Why don't you clarify that question? I wonder what you mean. I mean, if there's some kind of clarify that question about educational issues because I'm not sure what it means. All right, so that's the F visa. So the F visa, again, the B visa can't work at all. The F visa can only really work at the school or in an internship. Another very popular type, of course, the B visa is the most, I would think the B visa is the most popular type of non-immigrant visa. The F visa perhaps is the second most popular just because our educational system is so highly revered around the world. Another really neat one is called a J visa. And a J visa is sometimes called a work and learn visa. These are for people that have, I think they have 2 years of college. There's a sponsoring agency here, and they're admitted to the United States generally for a summer. And during that summer, they're allowed to both attend classes and work. And that's real work. That doesn't have to be for their school or some internship. They can actually work in full-time earning jobs for that 4 months. Now, that's pretty unusual. There are very few exceptions to the rule that non-immigrant visa holders are not allowed to work. You start working here, you start putting down roots, you open bank account. This becomes, that becomes hard for people to go home. They've got connections here. So what's the point of the J visa? The J visa is to sponsor cultural exchange. Remember that the J visa applicant has to have 2 years of college, has to have demonstrated the means to get here and home. These people generally are going to be the movers and shakers, the elite of that country, the the college graduates. So it would be nice that if they went back, they understood us. That would foster peace, understanding between the two countries. Perhaps one of these J visa holders might rise to the position of president of some other country, and one day when his finger's lingering over the red button about to nuke the United States, he'll remember that summer he spent working in Jiffy Lube, listening to ZZ Top, and that might, that sort of thing might make him think twice about doing something bad to us. He might develop an affinity or a kind feeling toward the United States. So that's the purpose of these J visa programs. There's also technology transfer, and that's not the nasty kind of technology transfer. But people who come here on J visas work with American technology, some of the best in the world, and they're familiar with it when they go home. Windows platform, our programming systems, Arduino microcomputers, all the latest technology that many of these countries don't have, and they come home and they understand it and they know how to use it, and it makes it possible for future employers in those countries to use people that have experience with American stuff, technology, gear, equipment, methods, business processes. All of that is a wonderful program. Now, J visa holders, that's just a regular non-immigrant visa. The period of stay is, again, usually a summer. I think they come in like May and leave in like October. There's a lot of overstays with J visa holders because they get these work authorizations. They even have social security cards that are marked not valid for work without DHS authorization. Employers commonly don't check to make sure the authorization exists. Once that's been presented, they keep working. And this is a shadow economy of people unlawfully working in the United States. The other thing about J visa workers, and one of the things that makes this such a recipe for foolishness in immigration law avoidance, is that they don't have to pay FICA, Social Security taxes. So that means because they're not citizens and they're never going to be able to claim Social Security benefits, J visa holders don't have to pay into the Social Security Trust Fund. And because of that, employers don't have to pay them as much. So the employers aren't really in a rush to check and see if those authorizations have expired, the work authorizations, because that would represent an increase in the pay they have to pay if they had to start hiring Americans. So there is some abuse in the J visa program, but overall it's a great program for all the countries involved. There is one caveat with J visa holders. Some of them have what's called a 2-year, hey Dinesh, a 2-year residency requirement. And that means, that comes about when one or the other country, that it would be either the United States or their home country, has paid for all or part of the J visa program. And that's where the countries themselves are paying for this cultural exchange. And in order to facilitate that, these J visa holders have to go home and they have to stay there for 2 years because the home country that paid to have them come here and learn about America, or our country that paid to have them come here wants to make sure that that technology, that cultural methods transfer happens, and that will never happen if this person never goes home. So, for example, even a J visa holder who comes here and during their period of J visa marries an American citizen and gets pregnant, still will have to go home and live out that 2-year requirement. There are opportunities to apply for waivers of that. The rule is that simply being separated from your spouse is not enough to get a waiver. So there would have to be something like a child or some other need. There has to be a hardship to an American if the 2-year requirement is enforced. And that's a way of getting a waiver of the 2-year requirement. But and not all J visa holders have it. It's stamped right on their J visa. Anybody who has a J visa can take it out and look, and it will say this person is subject to the 2-year home residency requirement, or this person is not, and that's how you would know. So those are the three, I think, most common types of visas I see. My practice is primarily family and humanitarian immigration, so I don't do a lot of work visas. I know how to do them if anybody needs help. But the B tourist, and that could also be a sort of business visa. Again, you're not allowed to earn in the United States on a B visa. But if you were, for example, a foreign executive coming here to lease a building or open a plant, that would probably be on a B visa, and that's the kind of work you're allowed to do on it. But for the most part, the B visas are tourist visas. Sometimes that's called a B2 visa. That's a non-immigrant visa. You can't get a green card. Not on a B visa. There are ways that you can change your status into a status that can get a green card, but just on that alone, you can't. Now, of course, a B visa holder that married an American citizen, they would get the green card that way. But that's the first one. The F visa, the student, they have an almost unlimited duration. They're allowed in the country as long as they're enrolled in classes. They also can't work, except with the 2 exceptions, which is for the school that they're going to and in an internship called OPT that's approved by the school. And the J visa holder, the work and learn visa, they're allowed to work full-time jobs. There's no real limitation on that, and or study, but it's a very short duration. And if they're subject to the 2-year residency requirement, it can't be extended. So those are some of the common types of non-immigrant visas. Now, another topic of some confusion is the term green card. Okay, Sammy, let's see. Oh, Sammy's asking about educational disability. All right, so an educational disability. No, all right, well, let's get that one. All right, here's a question. What is the difference between a visa and a green card? All right, that's good. They're actually not green. They're kind of greenish, but they're not really green anymore. A green card is what's called a green card's a slang term. Green card is a permanent resident card. And it means that person is a permanent resident of the United States. They're allowed in here. They're allowed to work. They're allowed to do all sorts of things. There are a few exceptions. They can't serve on a jury. They can't be police, I think. But for the most part, they're allowed to do almost everything. They can't vote for sure, but they're allowed to do almost everything American citizens can do, with limited exceptions of really core constitutional things. So that's a green card. It also is called a permanent resident card, and it's proof. The legal term is permanent resident card. It's proof that the holder is a permanent resident of the United States. Some people stay in the permanent resident category for their whole life. They don't want to become citizens of the United States. That's not really the intended purpose of it. The purpose of permanent residence, although again it can be permanent and you can stay that way, but the real purpose of permanent residence is kind of like a step on the way to becoming a citizen. So a visa is a document that authorizes your admission. And again, we talked about non-immigrant versus immigrant. I went over some non-immigrant types. But if you came in on an immigrant visa, and that's where you're intending to move here forever, that's what you would do. You'd be coming in and applying for a green card. But that's the permanent resident and green card issue. So if you already had a green card and you wanted to come to the United States, that's actually a pretty straightforward matter. If you've ever gone through immigration in an airport, there's a whole bunch of lines for citizens, and then there's a line for permanent residents, a separate line, and a lot of times it's shorter, but of course it takes them longer to get through, and then there's lines for non-citizens. The permanent resident, if he wants to travel at will, can, as long as they have in their possession their green card and an unexpired machine-readable passport from whatever country they have one from. It would be American, because you have to be a citizen to get a passport. All right. Now, there's some other kind of difficult issues coming up now with driving and work authorizations. We've been seeing a lot of the work authorizations that are issued. Well, let's talk about driving. Almost all these categories, B, F, J, they can get driving licenses, right? But those driver's licenses automatically expire with the duration of their status. They have to show their immigration papers to get the driver's license. And if you're only allowed in here for 180 days, you're going to get a driver's license that expires in 180 days. I cannot extend your straight driver's license unless we extend your status. So if you've got a situation where your status is expiring and you want to extend your driver's license, you can go to PennDOT, but you're wasting your time. You're going to have to come to me or someone like me first to extend your stay. I can do that. Almost every one of these stays can be extended with the exception of the J visa, and that's only some of them, the ones that are subject to that 2-year residency requirement. But the driving is becoming a problem because, and that is an intentional act, an intentional policy to make sure that people go home. I mean, this place becomes much, much less fun if you can't get around. Work permit expiration is another one. A lot of these work permits are tied to other benefits. We recently had a situation where a man and a woman got married, filed for a green card based on marriage. It was issued, and a green card based on marriage is a conditional permanent resident card, and the condition is that the marriage be bona fide and stay together for 2 years. At some point in the process, the marriage wasn't doing so well, and USCIS had called these people in, which they do, for an interview, a marriage interview. Not a Stokes interview, just a regular adjustment of status interview. And as it turns out, the woman, the citizen spouse, who was the female in the marriage, told the authorities the marriage wasn't doing so well. They revoked his conditional permanent resident status, and they revoked his driving and work permits. So it became very difficult for him very, very quickly. Luckily for him, we're working now on a different angle for that fellow, and I think he's fully entitled to it. So let's see what else we got today. Sammy, the process of extending the stay works. Okay, that's a very good question. There's an application for that. We do that kind of work. There's a lot of that kind of work. Sometimes people want to stay longer. There's an application you want to apply, if possible, before your existing period of authorized stay expires, because it's impossible to extend status that doesn't exist anymore. But if we get that in on time, before a couple weeks before your period of authorized stay ends, and demonstrate with it that those 3 factors, that you still have the significant ties with your home country, that you have not developed ties that are going to keep you here, and that if we allow your stay to go on longer, it won't destroy your ties with your home country, you will again overcome the presumption of immigrant intent, and that visa will be extended. This can get sticky. I've heard stories lately where people were unable to demonstrate those things, and the service concluded they'd formed an immigrant intent, and they not only refused to extend a visa or extend this period of authorized stay, but they canceled the underlying visa. So if you're going to extend a visa, and historically those were pretty easy. Those were liberally granted by the authorities. You just filed some forms and sent in the filing fees, and they were happy to get them. That's not the administrative priority right now. So I wouldn't go, even though your buddy 5 years ago just went and filed one, or somebody did it. I think you might want to really talk to a lawyer, at least consult with somebody about the sort of things you want to add to an extension or change, because the same form that you use, the same process you use to extend a non-immigrant stay can be used to change the purpose. If you would come in as a student, or, well, let's do it this way. If you come in as a tourist and said, hey, I kind of like this place, I might like to take a couple courses, you can change to almost any other non-immigrant category that can be sponsored. That B and F, the tourist and student kind of do a lot of interchanging. But the same thing would happen as an extension, because it effectively is an extension. It's just an extension to do something else. And you would again have to overcome the presumption of immigrant intent, and again at risk that not only the extension or change will be denied, but the underlying visa will be canceled because the service concluded that you'd formed immigrant intent. So that's that's sort of the thing. Now there was a question about educational issues, and that's why they failed school. I can't comment on that. I mean, I obviously I'm a kind-hearted person. I feel for people that maybe have these emotional or cognitive or educational challenges. Okay, I really do. But the F status is to come here and study. If you're not doing that, if you've been thrown out of school, if you fail out of school, it literally, you're only allowed in here for the duration of your studies. If your studies have been terminated either because you dropped out, failed out, or got thrown out, the duration of your studies is over and your period of authorized stay has ended. So that's how they would handle that. And it could seem cold, but that's the rule, at least for now. I mean, there may be other things. And again, this is kind of plays back into, and I don't want to say that in a way. There's other kind of neat visas that we can get people. There's U visas. Those are people who are victims of crime. And the rule with those is that they have to be both harmed in a crime and helpful to the prosecutorial authorities. And during the course of the prosecution, that doesn't require that the perpetrator get caught or convicted, just that the U visa applicant is a victim of a crime and that they've cooperated with law enforcement. And that could be something as simple as allowing law enforcement to photograph a black eye that you got during a mugging, or attending court hearings, or giving statements to police. Law enforcement, particularly prosecutors' offices, will pretty commonly sign off on those. But as I said, like for example, the tourist visa, the B visa, the American interest that wants that person here is the tourism industry. And in the F visa, the American industry that wants that person here is the school industry. In a U visa, the industry that wants you here is the prosecutorial apparatus of the United States. There were a long period where this didn't exist, and people who were in the country, foreigners in various status, criminals could prey on them, safe in the knowledge that this person would have to go home because their status would expire before the prosecution could be run through. So in order to suppress these crimes, because that person, the next time they do a crime, might do it to one of us. So we allow those U visa victims of crime who are harmed in the crime and helpful to the authorities, we allow them to get a U visa, and a U visa you can get a green card on. So I'm not suggesting that anyone go out and intentionally become a victim of a crime, but that crime victims can get status. Similarly, victims of trafficking, that's a T visa. Again, they have to be cooperative and cooperating with law enforcement. And then there's the biggest cooperator with law enforcement, the S visa, sometimes indelicately referred to as a snitch visa. They're informants that are sponsored by law enforcement in order to facilitate the prosecution of criminals. So that's some of the topics we're talking about. Again, please do join our followers list. There's a sign-up form on our Facebook page. It's a couple posts down. Let me take a look here. There's a logo of the Allegheny. You sign up, there's a WUFU there. You can put in your information. We will send you Allegheny Immigration Group promotional materials. There's some very nice coffee cups. There's some nice quality t-shirts with our logo on it. If you'd like, I'll get you something to show you. I think I have some over here. Right, I'm just getting that stuff for you. And these are just nice things to have. They're free. Sometimes they're fun to have. And here's an Allegheny Immigration Group t-shirt. There are these handy backpacks. They're nice. They're lightweight string backpacks, good for just stuff. There are fun coffee cups. There are pens. There's stuff, and you'll get that. But also by signing up, you'll get invitations, notifications, immigration news, notifications when we have lives. And when we have street events, of course, you'll be invited to those too. So I do encourage people to sign up for the Allegheny Immigration Group. I don't know what we called it, the friends list or something, a followers list. Okay. That green card through marriage special, $1,000 legal fee for green card through marriage. Again, there are significant fees to the government. There's filing fees with USCIS of $1,760. And there's a medical exam that's required that's a couple $100. So you're looking at maybe $3,100 out the door, but we're cutting the legal fee really to the bone. I mean, that we can't do it much longer. I got to end that on Monday, but that'll be on through the weekend. If you want to talk to me, my office is 412-521-2000. You can call me. My cell and WhatsApp are the same, 412-973-3442, and I'll be available all weekend. So we get these things, process them That's a good deal. That special started because the public charge rule was changing, and again, if you go through my page, there's lives about that. That has been put on hold. I think they'll be back, but it's not as pressing of a concern now. I extended the special because there were people who really wanted to take advantage of it. But that is on, okay, through Monday. So if you want to do that, again, my office is 412-521-2000. My cell and WhatsApp are the same number, 412-973-3442. I'll be around all weekend. Again, there's a similar potential deadline coming down on those of you who may be thinking about filing an asylum claim. I've been doing asylum cases for 20 years, and if you think you might have an asylum claim, I would like to talk to you. I can help you, but you're going to have to come in. And you might have to come in sooner than you think because they're going to start charging people to file those applications. And as I said, it's $50 to file the asylum claim. That's not the problem. The problem is that if you're filing that, you want to have your work permit. And working without a permit while you're in the process of filing for asylum or waiting for a disposition could get your asylum denied just for that. So they're going to make you pay for that, and it's going to come out to about it's $50 for the application, $50 for the asylum fee, $410 to apply for work authorization, and $85 for biometrics. That's fingerprinting. So it'll be like $445 or $450 that you have to pay. We can save that to you if we get you in before they change this rule. It's clearly been proposed. There's a BuzzFeed article in their October 11th issue if you want to look at it about this. And there's also a short talk on our Facebook. I did a video about that a couple days ago. So those are the housekeeping issues. Sammy, you had some great questions. Oh, Victor's got one. Let's take a look. I'm not sure. What was a question? Can a green card holder married to a U.S. citizen invite a family member to live in the USA? Yes. A green card holder married to a U.S. citizen is a conditional permanent resident of the United States. All permanent residents are capable of sponsoring family members, not parents. Well, you can't even do that. I think it just takes much longer for green card holder, for people to get into the United States based on the sponsorship of a green card holder. Now, if you get your citizenship and you wanted to sponsor a spouse or a child that is both unmarried and under 21, that's a very fast process because that's a first priority. There's no limit on the amount of visas that can be issued, and there's almost no waiting period. In fact, it's so fast that we file simultaneously your request to give them a permission to file for a green card and they're filing for a green card in the same envelope. I mean, that's that fast for that first priority. And that first priority is the spouse or unmarried children under 21 of a citizen. That one gets the fast processing. Everything else seems to take like 8 to 10 years. I've seen them go as fast as 7, but that's about the timing now. I hope that's responsive there. Let's see what else we got. Were there any other questions? Anybody still? I mean, I see a couple people watching. All right. Well, that I think is going to conclude today's talk. I really appreciate all you guys for coming and looking at this stuff. I hope you'd share this live. It's important for me. You know, this is a small firm. We don't have some massive advertising budget. I do some Facebook videos and things like this, but there's not a big budget. We do like word of mouth. Okay, so don't just share it, but if you have friends with immigration need, if you have communities that you belong to that have a lot of people that might have immigration needs in it, I'm willing to come to you. I'm willing to give a presentation to your group if you'd like that. But I really need the referrals, and I'd appreciate them. Again, my name is Joe Murphy. I'm a lawyer with Allegheny Immigration Group in Pittsburgh. My practice is primarily in family and humanitarian immigration. Regionally, I'm all over Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, some Ohio. We also have satellite practices in Minneapolis, Seattle, and San Francisco. So I get around, one of the Beach Boys here. But we'll take those referrals and we gladly have them. And your people will get premium service. This is not a fraud shop like that lady with the B visa and the faked up green card. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope to hear from you, and I hope you sign up for future notifications, gifts, and invitations to our public events. I'm Joe Murphy. Thank you for watching.